You can imagine, I think, why Pascal's argument is so famous. Pascal's wager is such a famous line of thought. It's got some power. Many people are impressed with the thought that even if there's a tiny chance that there is a GCB, and you can look back at that matrix that we just considered and notice that depending upon what how much you value the outcomes, you can even get an outcome that favors theism if the probability of the existence of a GCB is smaller than 1%. It might be very, very small. So long as the value that you attach to eternal bliss is high enough, it'll still be reasonable for you to believe in a GCB. So many people have been impressed with Pascal's wager and thought that it's one perfectly reasonable support for theism, even in the absence of theoretical rationality and its ability to support theism. But there are questions that we might want to ask Pascal in order to figure out whether this is an ultimately satisfactory line of thought. First of all, many people have wondered, and Pascal himself in the essay that you will have read considers the following question. Is it really possible to will myself to believe something? I mean, suppose I go through this line of thought, I get convinced that yes, it's practically rational to believe in a GCB, but I can't just form a belief by snapping my fingers. That is to say, to follow an example from my colleague William Lycan, if someone says, look, I'll pay you $100 if you can form a belief, a sincere, full-fledged belief that there's a big swordfish hovering above your head. Well, I don't think you can do that. You can't just form a belief, especially if it's based on perceptual experience, form a belief of that kind. So too, I don't think that I can snap my fingers and just form the belief that a GCB exists, even if I've not done so, if I've not already been a believer. So, can I make myself believe something? Pascal says, yes, you can, even if you can't do it directly, immediately. Even if you can't do it by snapping your fingers, just like that, so to speak. He says, there are other ways of cultivating belief that might work over time, that are certainly worth giving a try, given the practical rationality of becoming a theist. So maybe you could hire a hypnotist. Maybe you could go to the relevant church that's associated with the form of theism that you prefer. Be it Zoroastrianism, be it something else, it doesn't matter. Choose whatever form of religious devotion you want and let that be the area, the mode of life, the style of being that helps you cultivate your theism. Surround yourself with theists. Get rid of the sources of doubt that might be around you. Get rid of the books and the articles and the newspapers that call theism into doubt, for example. There's a lot of music out there, Creed, Lifehouse, and so forth, that plays enjoyable bands that play enjoyable music that still have religious themes. Get rid of your anti-religious heavy metal, death metal, and so forth, and go for the stuff that's more theistically supportive. That's fine. Pascal suggests over time, it may take months, may even take years, no hurry, just you'll find that over time theism will come to you, and to borrow a phrase from William James, eventually belief will come and stupefy your scruples. That is to say, you'll find yourself sweating with conviction, being a theist over time, as long as you forget about the sources of doubt, the sources of skepticism, as long as you surround yourself with other theists, you should be okay over time. So that's one question that we might ask Pascal that it seems we can probably find a decent answer to. What about the following? Somebody might say, look, if you were to become a theist in this sort of mercenary way, that is to say, you're trying to show that you should be a theist because it's in your best interest to do so. That seems like it's a little bit self-interested, a little bit crass perhaps, or vulgar to become a theist in that way. To follow another example, line of thought of William James. William James suggests that somebody who comes to theism via Pascal's wager would probably provoke the ire of a greatest conceivable being who would disapprove of somebody's becoming a theist along these practical grounds. Well, you might ask, therefore, would a GCB really reward someone who became a believer on such self-interested or prudential grounds? But I think Pascal would have an answer to this question, even though, so far as I know, he never directly considered it. He might say, I don't care how you get to theism. It doesn't matter. As long as you're full of theistic conviction by the time it matters, that is, by the time you show up at the day of judgment, it's okay. It doesn't matter how you get yourself to be a theist. Some people might become theists because they experience what they consider to be a miracle. Other people might be theists because they just were born with a predilection towards that. Why does it matter as long as their theism is genuine and sincere by the end? So by the time you're a theist, if you're sincere, you might indeed want to find yourself forgetting about the Pascal-style method that got you to theism, but as long as it's sincere at the end, it's okay. Think about an analogy with how we teach children. When we've got young children, 2, 3, 4-year-old kids who don't yet fully understand the difference between right and wrong, we often try to motivate them, inspire them, incentivize them into morality by saying something like, you know, if you are nice, if you can behave well today and not get in a fight with your little sister or something, then I'll give you a lollipop at the end. That is to say, we often try to goad children into being good by means of a sort of incentive or disincentive system. And that by itself, we might say, is a sort of compromise we make with practical considerations as we try to get our children to be decent people. That way of shoehorning a child into morality does not preclude them from becoming genuinely and sincerely moral by the time they're adults. And most of us who are parents would hope that that's what happens with children by the time they're finishing their teenage years and finding their way into adulthood. That even if they started out in morality by means of an incentive, more self-interested kind of system, as long as the result is that they're moral in a way that's genuine and sincere, it doesn't matter how they got there. So too, as long as your theism, by the time you are at the pearly gates, as it were, is a sincere one, it doesn't matter whether you got to that theism on prudential or evidential theoretical grounds. As long as it's genuine, as long as you're full of conviction by the end, that's what matters. So I think Pascal would probably have something to say by way of answer to James's challenge to him. If you want to call this mercenary theism, it doesn't matter. As long as it's genuine theism at the end, we don't need to worry about how we got there.